The following podcast contains spoilers for the 1967 animated film The Jungle Book. Hello and welcome to another episode of the DVD Clutter podcast. I'm joined by
Heather.
And I'm Mattie. And today we're talking about a little film from our childhoods, The Jungle Book.
And don't miss your chance to own one of the greatest movies of all time.
You'd better believe it.
The song-filled celebration of Walt Disney's 19th animated masterpiece, The Jungle Book.
What is your relationship with The Jungle Book and with classic Disney films more broadly?
I'm pretty well versed in classic Disney films. We all grew up watching them. For me, The Jungle Book was not really one that was a repeat viewing in my house. I didn't have this one on VHS, the classic clamshell Disney VHSs that we all had. For me, the classics, Peter Pan, Cinderella, Snow White, those were the ones I had on repeat. The Jungle Book kind of bored me as a kid. So you might ask, how did we...
Well, so for those who don't know, for those who might be new listeners here, in this podcast, what we do is we go through our DVD collection, we watch the films, and we talk about them, and at the end of the conversation, we decide if we both want to get rid of the film or not. We decide if this is still serving us in our place where we are now as an adult. And The Jungle Book and a few other Disney films just seems to have appeared in our collection not that long ago.
Yeah.
I'm a little offended because I was not told that there were new films coming into our collection.
There were some new films that came into our collection by the way of me going to a garage sale, one of my favorite things to do. And a man was selling his kids' Disney DVDs because they had grown up. And about 6 months ago, my sister had a baby. And so my brain was like, well, I need to collect all of the Disney DVDs no matter what, so that when she's old enough and she wants to watch them, we have them. And I came to, I believe it was The Jungle Book and The Fox and the Hound that I found that day. So that's how I came to end up with The Jungle Book on DVD.
Now, with that said, you said that you don't have a relationship to the film overall. What did you think of it watching it now?
I didn't love it. I think that there's some fun moments. And overall, I thought exactly what I thought as a kid the one or two times I watched it, which is that I'm kind of bored by the movie. I'm not impressed by the color palette. I'm not super into the animation. And the story is just kind of for me.
A little bit of historical context on this film is that it came out in the late 60s. I believe it was the last film that Walt Disney lived to see to its finish.
I didn't know that.
And you can sort of tell at that point that the animation department at Disney was not really where it was in the late 30s, early 40s, even arguably like the 50s into the early 60s with films like Sleeping Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you mean, because the animation is definitely, it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot rougher. You can sometimes see the lines and the characters a little bit. You can definitely tell there are shots of Mowgli like walking on the logs, and it looks like he's just kind of floating in front of it. And multiple points in the film where you can tell they're just reusing the same animation clips on different backgrounds.
Yeah. It feels very unfinished to me. It feels like there just was not a lot of world building that went into what the characters, how they're going to move and what the color palette's going to be. I mean, we're in the jungle and the whole time we're just getting, these like really muted greens and browns, and occasionally you get a pop of color, but it's just so boring to look at. It's not exciting.
I feel that way. I brought up Sleeping Beauty. I actually kind of feel similarly about Sleeping Beauty. I know a lot of people really love the animation in that film, but to me, it's like the flat and like there's like a stiltedness to the camera movement. Whereas like you go back and you look at a film like Pinocchio, where the camera's flying through the town and you get that multi-plane animation that really gives a little bit of a 3D edge, and there's a little bit of magic to it. And one thing that I was kind of interested in going into this one is that this is a very kind of humanistic story compared to a lot of Disney films. There's always a lot of literal magic. The Fantasia is all about the parallels between conducting and making music and shaping emotions in the way that a magician might shape a spell or a potion or something. And that's the theme that in that film they keep returning to. In this film, I can think of maybe one scene that has like something that I would literally describe as magic, and everything else, aside from the talking animals, which is just kind of built into the premise and not really supernatural. It's just that the characters are animals, that it's not really there in this film the same way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm not familiar with the source material, the Rudyard Kipling book or stories. For a story about kind of finding yourself and where do you fit in, it doesn't do anything with that for me. I don't think that in the 60s, first of all, maybe not the best time to be sort of having Disney deal with these deeper themes.
I guess this is where we start to get into it, because this is a film, like many old Disney films, there's some racial coding in here. And you mentioned Rudyard Kipling. The whole premise of the story has this very sort of British perspective on Indian landscapes, I guess. And there's definitely a lot of Orientalism going on, just kind of baked into the premise of like deepest jungle, sort of that kind of idea. It's very much kind of like a modern mythologizing of an ancient ecology. And along with that, we do have some racial coding, which includes, probably most relevant to today as we record this, when the President of the United States made a racist tweet that compared black political rivals to orangutans. There's a long history of that kind of racial presentation, and this is a film that does have scenes of jive talking, jazz singing, monkeys and apes. How did that play for you on this viewing?
So the song itself is actually, to me, the standout number of the movie, which was something I was kind of thinking to myself, to me, I don't think there's any other number in the movie that is as dynamic as what they put together as far as animation goes. But the subject matter itself and what King Louis is actually saying in the song is, I think, very reductive. I think that because it was created in the late 60s, and, you know, we have during that time the civil rights movement, we have, you know, segregation, we have all these things. And I'm assuming a lot of white creators worked on this movie. They're kind of coming at it as, well, King Louis sees himself as sort of less than, and he wants to be human, I guess. And it's very reductive in terms of how are we looking at people of color.
I was kind of surprised that watching this film, I don't think the racial coding is as blatant and offensive for me as so many other Disney films. In particular, Dumbo and Peter Pan, and obviously Song of the South. Those are ones that I would never show a child.
Yeah.
I would even hesitate to show even more recent films. You know, I recently showed my godkids Muppet Treasure Island and was surprised by some of the really horrendous depictions of indigenous people in that film that I had kind of forgotten about and was like, oh no.
Yeah.
But actually, I felt like the racial coding in this film, I think it's more built into the premise of the way that they're using the metaphor of the apes, is that they don't come across to me as really that black coded in the film. I don't think that the animation leans into kind of minstrelry the way that you would see in Dumbo or something like that. I actually feel like the racial coding for King Louis is in a lot of ways more Italian. He's kind of more of like the mob boss in the jungle. And I feel like, we'll get into this in a little bit, but like that's kind of his assertion of power and self-realization.
I think I agree with you that watching it, I was expected to be super offended. And then I was kind of like, well, it's not that they depicted the characters in such a way to be offensive. I think for me, it's the combination of everything, the music, the type of animal that they pick that can be used as a means of racism. And I think that all of it together for me is just sort of, it's the perspective of where it's coming from, because it's not like it's coming from the Black perspective.
Right.
It's coming from the white, like you said, very colonialist perspective.
I think another element that kind of softens that for me, that makes it less egregious in this one, is that the monkeys are not the only characters in the film that feel racial coded to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the villains, and this might be very shallow, and I do want to acknowledge that you and I are probably not the best people to be talking about this with.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Bagheera is literally a Black Panther. I
Mm-hmm.
think you can easily sort of code African-American identity onto him in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, to me, more problematic than the monkeys is actually Baloo.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of, you know, the sort of like smooth jive inner city expressions that the monkeys have. And he also sings jazz. And Bagheera also is like very judgmental of him for like, you know, being lazy, for not being a hard worker and not being like self-responsible and disciplined in the way that he is. I think at one point he calls him a jungle bum, and Bagheera says a lot of things in the film that are very like, you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And some of the language that he uses to talk about Baloo and about the monkeys feels very loaded.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely can see that. Yeah, and he even brings up the fact that, well, what's wrong with the jungle? I grew up in the jungle. I could be very coded that way.
One of the things that I kind of wanted to come into this, look at it as a fable, not so much as like, oh, you have to stay with your own kind, which is also an interesting message to develop throughout the 60s when this film was being made.
Yeah.
Walt Disney is not known for being a good person in my book.
Yeah.
He is notoriously cruel to his employees. There were multiple strikes and he was very on board with McCarthyism. So all of that in the context, the messaging of this film can feel segregationist. Again, I kind of went in kind of intentionally not wanting to look at it through that lens so much, but we do have to acknowledge it and we have to talk about it.
I think a problem too for me is the ways in which you go on this journey with Mowgli and you think he's going to find out something extraordinary about himself, or he's making all these new friends and wow, we have more similarities than differences. And then at the end of the movie, to me, the most ridiculous, annoying, offensive part of the movie to me is that there's this young girl that he sees when he finally arrives in the, you know, where the humans live, and she's singing about basically how she's doing chores while her mother's cooking and her father's out hunting. And one day, you know, she looks over at Mowgli, they have this connection, and then she continues to sing about how one day she's also going to have her own daughter who's going to go get the water while she's cooking and her husband is hunting.
How old is Mowgli?
He's 10 because Bagheera says it's been 10
Okay.
rain seasons or
He's
10 monsoon
10
seasons.
years.
Yes.
He's 10 years old and he is already like uncontrollably horny. Like,
I'm
what
so
is
mad.
going on with that?
I was so angry at that. I was like, this is the point where, okay, up until now, I was like, maybe I can make a case for showing this to my niece at some point. When that, I was like, we're done. I was like, absolutely not. There is no way. I'm so pissed at that scene. The point of this movie then is Mowgli sees this girl and that's it. You've got to stick with your own kind and play your roles. And that's it. And that's what we get from the movie. And I'm so pissed by it because it seems like a lot of the characters around Mowgli are saying, no, don't do that. Join us. You know, have fun. Like, we have all this fun. Like,
I'm actually going to be the defender of this film.
oh, no.
No, because hear me out. Because the jungle, as it's presented, largely a male world. This film definitely doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
No.
But weirdly, it is not absence of like sexuality. So many of the characters, good and evil, are not only, we've talked about racial coding, and I think that one of the things that softens kind of the villainous racial coding of King Louie is also the racial coding of Baloo. He's kind of the heart of the film in a way.
Yeah.
Because he is so caring to Mowgli and because he can reach Mowgli on his level.
Right.
And I look at Mowgli, I look at Bagheera, I look at Kaa, I look at Shere Khan, And every one of those characters, they are all queer coded to me. I look at them and I'm like, these are a bunch of gays. They're trying to make it in the jungle.
Yeah.
And they all kind of have their own path to try to make their own way and try to live. And some of them, you know, the wolves and the monkeys, they are sort of doing so through community and collective action. You have Baloo, who's like, nobody messes with me. I don't mess with anybody, but I get along with pretty much everybody. Yeah. You've got Bagheera, who again is like self-discipline and, you know, being this kind of like beacon of sort of gentle, positive, masculine leadership. And all of these great things. And there's not really, you know, everybody kind of fears Shere Khan because Shere Khan is just pure power. He's just, I am the strongest, fastest kitten in the jungle, and I am going to kill you. And nobody messes with me. You know, Kaa is terrifying throughout the film. You know, Shere Khan is the one character who just is unfazed by him and unthreatened by him. And then Mowgli gets to the human world, and suddenly there's this very strict gender binary and this very strict sense of like, here's your role, and everything is now suddenly rigid. Mowgli is returned to the village and the balance of the jungle is restored. But on the other hand, it's like Mowgli is leaving what appears to me as a modern viewer, he's leaving a much better, more supportive environment to then go lock into these other expectations that he's been resisting the whole film. I think that ending scene is very funny because your reaction, seeing it, and I guess you didn't remember it from having seen it earlier in your life.
I would have seen it maybe once or twice as a kid.
You know, I remembered that scene, and I remember, you know, Baloo saying, don't pay attention to those. Those are nothing but trouble. And, you know, your reaction is Baloo's reaction in the movie. So I kind of feel like there is a reading of the film, to me, that is more identified with Baloo in that moment. And we don't go into the village with Mowgli. We stay with Baloo and Bagheera as they walk off arm in arm, presumably ready to hook up. They've been flirting the whole movie.
They are definitely hooking up. But the whole movie, they've been flirting with each other.
And like they're kind of taking on the parental role, but they're also like, there's literally a point where Bagheera is trying to make the case for that segregation. And Baloo takes it, jokes that like, oh, you're making a pass at me. And he seems into it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't marry a panther, would you?
I don't know. Come to think of it, no panther ever asked me.
Something I found kind of interesting about the themes of the movie, and I was thinking about this as we're watching it, just about Shere Khan as a villain even. I was thinking, well, I mean, he's just doing what he's naturally supposed to do. I think a lot of these characters are just fulfilling their natural roles, whether it's predator or prey. Everybody's so scared of Shere Khan because Shere Khan is scared of the humans. Yeah. The humans have the ultimate power in this movie, not Shere Khan.
I also find it interesting because in the context of Rudyard Kipling and the colonization of India, that metaphor actually resonates with me very well, that Shere Khan, sort of the natural indigenous power in the jungle, would see the encroachment of humans the way that, you know, the way that indigenous people saw the encroachment of Europeans as a threat and want to wipe it out. You know, it's sort of expected that like we're supposed to identify with the humans and in this metaphor with the whites. You know, sort of around the time that Westerns were kind of waning in popularity, and a few of them were starting to sort of question the underlying thing of like, maybe the cowboys were not the heroes in these stories against the Indians, quote unquote.
Yeah. And something else I was kind of surprised at and didn't remember was that for some reason I thought we were going to spend a lot more time with the wolves and Mowgli growing up and all of this. We don't spend any time with them.
No, we don't really get that.
We just jump right into he's 10 years old and now he's got to get out of there because...
I was kind of surprised that they spent so much time on Mowgli as a baby getting introduced to the wolves, that part of the movie felt very slow and very dull as an opening to what was presumably trying to be a blockbuster film at the time. One thing that I do appreciate about the film is it's got a great like rogues gallery of villains. How did you feel about that? Did any of them stand out for you as like really interesting? And what was your relationship to that?
I thought that they were all actually pretty interesting, some more than others. I think actually for me, King Louis was the best character in the movie. The best like villain, I guess you can call him a villain. I thought for me that was really the most fun in a way. Actually, that whole segment was, and that was something I going into it remembered that song and Bare Necessities were like the two scenes I remember the most. But I really thought that for me, King Louis had the most sort of vibrant, personality. And I was watching the animation during that scene. I'm like, this is the most dynamic that I've seen it in this movie where, all of the characters are doing all of these different things and the camera's actually moving and there's dancing. And
it's definitely the most ambitious. There's one other sequence that I think kind of gives it a run for its money. And it involves my favorite villain. We all have our problematic childhood Disney crushes. And maybe one day we'll get into some of yours.
Yes.
But, mine include characters like Ursula, Jafar, Maleficent, and you may be sensing a theme coming out here, and Kaa.
Look me in the eye when I'm speaking to you.
Please, Kaa.
Both eyes, if you please.
Kaa is the snake that launched 1,000 kinks. You know what? Tie me up, stare into my eyes, and shut down my brain. I'm into it.
Yeah, Kaa is a great character. I love the scene, too, where Shere Khan is like, hey, why don't you just show me your coils, and he's just like, oh shit, he's like, oh, here it is, but he's really got Mowgli or is it Mowgli he's got tied up?
He's got Mowgli tied up in his coils, and Shere Khan is like squeezing him and
I love the interplay between the villainous characters there. I think it's just kind of a little fun.
I love that scene too because at the start of the scene, Kaa kind of goes in and he's like, oh, I'm not scared of you because I'm fucking Kaa.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are you? I don't give a shit about Shere Khan.
Yeah.
And it's like, Shere Khan, he's pure power, but Kaa is like manipulative and like, I'm gonna, I'm good at sort of like whispering into your ear and making you think that you came up with the thing that I told you.
Yeah.
And Shere Khan is like, yeah, that just doesn't work on me. Shut up. I'll kill you in a second if I need to.
And I think with the villains, something that I didn't like about this movie is that because all of these characters that, he comes across are presented in a sort of villainous way, I thought, okay, if I was a kid watching this, I'm not really sure what I'd take away from it. And now, not to say that kids can't pick up on nuance, but I feel like, in so many Disney movies, it's very like black and white. Like, here's the villain and here's the good guys. And I was kind of thinking about it like, okay, if I was a kid, what might be something that I take away from this movie? How would I view it as a child?
For me, again, getting into that theme of like how people sort of assert and come into their own power. And they're all kind of modeling a different way of life for Mowgli of how you can survive in the jungle. And none of them really fit because every one of them is built on particular details. King Louis and the elephants and the wolves, they have safety in numbers. King Louis also is always looking for an angle on how to increase his power through his closeness with humans. Maybe he can get that technology. Right. Shere Khan, again, pure power. Kaa, manipulation. Bagheera, like positive masculine leadership, and Baloo just kind of like being off in not getting involved, doing his own thing. And I think it's interesting, and I was really a little bit disappointed that the film didn't lean into it a bit more.
Yeah. I think some of the themes are interesting, but the execution is just not there. And I don't even know if, because the source material is so problematic, I don't know that it could really be there. And we're still calling it the Jungle Book. I think it brings up some interesting things about self-preservation and about what you have to do to survive in certain scenarios and groups. But I don't think that Disney is the right.
I think in some ways it may be a more useful allegory for children because it has all of this nuance and doesn't present things in black and white in the same way that most Disney films do. But I also think that it's definitely just as a spectacle, as, you know, absent of the magic and everything. I don't know that that our niece is gonna come over and be like, oh, can we watch The Jungle Book?
Yeah. And I think going back to what you were saying about spectacle, we never get scale in this movie. Everything is so close up, except for the King Louis scene. That's the one time we get to see sort of, he's living in the ancient ruins there.
Yeah.
You know, there's no scale. There's nothing interesting. It's a jungle. There should be so much color. There should be so much stuff going on. And it is so flat. And it just seems very like muddied. Like the colors are just very muddied and very boring. There's not a lot of care, I feel like, put into this movie. It's like the people were just kind of like, it's fine.
I kind of feel like there is a certain charm to the animation style, to the sort of cheaper animation. And like, you know, we were talking the other day about Disney's Robin Hood, which not only recycled a lot of animation from itself the way that this film does, but recycles a lot of animation from the Jungle Book. It takes the character designs from the Jungle Book and just superimposes them. And same for, you know, takes animations from Snow White and things like that and just sort of traces over the drawings. I think that there is something that I do kind of like about this like little shaggier version of a Disney film. But I wouldn't necessarily give it priority in the way of like some of the Golden Age, and certainly not the Disney Renaissance films. One of the things when you go back and watch the old Disney films, when you grew up with Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, all of those, is like those are full musical stories. Right. Those are incredible, like building on themes through the music, and everything ties together like a Broadway show. Obviously, Ashman and Menken kind of charted that for them. And, you know, you look at the older ones and it's a little bit more like, hey, we're going to stop the movie now and there's going to be a song and dance number. And at the end of the song and dance number, we're going to get back to the movie. And the song and dance number is really what you're here for. But there's only going to be like 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
And again, outside of bare necessities, trust in me, I want to be like you, there's not really that kind of show-stopping number in it.
Yeah.
I was so excited to come in and talk about all these different themes of like leadership and personal values, and, you know, how you navigate the human world through this metaphor of the jungle. Like, it's there, but it's also just kind of lame in a little way.
Yeah. I think, you know, looking at a lot of the classic Disney movies, if I needed to do a big ranking, this would be close to the bottom, probably. I didn't completely dislike it, but I don't really see myself wanting to reach for it, wanting to watch it again. I think I come away with the same feeling I did as a kid, which is that was kind of boring and just okay. And maybe a couple of songs were fine.
Yeah, I still really like the film. I enjoyed it. I love the sparring between Baloo and Bagheera, trying to get influence on Mowgli and, you know, trying to impose their vision for him. I like the villains. I really enjoy some of the songs from it. I don't know that, like, if you tell me you want to get rid of it, which sounds like that's where you're going, I'm like just going to go along with it. But I also, like, I wouldn't push for that. But I guess the question that I have now is, we're talking about our niece. We're talking about having these Disney films for her to watch. Is this one that you think, with all of the baggage that it's carrying, is even appropriate for her?
So I think that it can still be enjoyed by kids. I don't find it to be so offensive that, you know, a kid couldn't enjoy it. Like, I can think specifically to a scene in Peter Pan off the top of my head that I would find way more offensive than things in this movie. But I think that there are so many better Disney movies. There are so many better animated movies in general nowadays that I don't see myself saying, this is a movie we have to watch together. You know, this is a childhood thing you need to experience. You know, I think it's fine to just skip it.
So I actually agree. I wouldn't really have any reservations about showing this one to a child. I would never let a child watch Peter Pan. I'd never let a child watch Dumbo. And I would be very selective about which sequences in Fantasia they could watch. for reasons not relating to racism, I might hesitate to show them Pinocchio until a certain age. But I guess for me, my perspective on this is because I don't feel strongly like we need to kick this one out of the collection, and because, you know, I talked about, like, again, some of my history with the film, I wouldn't necessarily want to remove that option for our niece or any other child if we happen to have it to begin with. You know, I don't feel any urgency.
Yeah. I think for me, the ultimate goal of what we're doing here is to create a collection where all of the films are representative of our values and our taste. And this doesn't do it for me. So for my personal collection, for our personal collection, I feel like it doesn't really fit in with the values and themes, and, you know, it does not really fit into that. So could it be something that I would grab from a library or something to show a kid? Yeah, maybe. But for my personal collection, I don't think it needs to stay.
If it's up to me, I'm probably not going to watch it again.
Yeah.
You know, like if I ever get a hankering for it, I'll go on and watch the clips on YouTube or something.
Exactly.
You know, assuming that Disney doesn't shut all of that down at some point. You know, I'm sort of, I guess that would be my one thing is I do like sequences from this. And the question is, you know, in the current climate, how much of this is going to actually be preserved in its original form and not be corrupted by AI or just business decisions who want to destroy their own properties as a tax write-off. I guess I'm okay with getting rid of it as well. Like, I do think that this is a film that a lot of kids will watch and enjoy, and then maybe have to address some kinky stuff later on in life that they realize that they've developed, as I have. So,
you know, I think maybe it's a DVD that could go to Nona's house or something like that. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to stay here. Maybe it stays in someone else's house in the family.
And it's interesting because there are other films that I think are better films overall, really good films, that I would say, no, you do not watch that here. I don't care what your parents say. I'm not showing it to you because I don't want to have to explain this stuff, and I don't trust your parents to unpack it. And if they do, I don't want them putting it on me. Like, why do I have to do all this extra work to talk about, you know?
I think Disney in general, as I get older, is I've really sort of, you know, I've seen so many problematic things with Disney, and I've kind of revisiting a lot of these movies that I liked as a kid. And I agree with you where I think that there's a lot of things in a lot of Disney movies that need to be explained. And I don't know that it's something that I necessarily want to take on explaining to someone. And I think that this movie it's in a gray area. It could kind of fall into that, where there is some stuff where it's like, I'm not so sure about that. But ultimately, I don't really think this one is one that I would need to keep. And in terms of Disney taking away certain properties, that's another thing that I kind of am annoyed with Disney in general, is the idea that I need to sort of preserve their films above all others because they're going to just take them away one day. They're going to put them back in the vault. And I'm kind of just like, you know what? Fuck that. If you want to take the movie away, whatever. I'm not upset if I never get to watch The Jungle Book again.
I'm not even necessarily thinking of Disney in particular in that case. I'm more so at this point thinking of Netflix, and the way that, you know, just our relationship to physical media and digital media overall, and how, you know, we can ensure that we keep accessing these films that are a part of our history. But at the same time, you know, I'm not a professional preservationist or even a volunteer one. I'm not capable of doing the work to actually preserve it in the way that it deserves to be preserved. This is just our private DVD collection.
Yeah.
I'm fine getting rid of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly, it's a larger conversation about, you know, film preservation. I think in general, I'm not going to preserve The Jungle Book here just because it's a Disney movie and it's, you know, I don't really care.
Yeah, that is, The Jungle Book can be someone else's responsibility.
Exactly.
Well, so that ends our conversation of The Jungle Book. Now the final question is, what do we have going on in our next episode?
We have the movie Face Off starring John Travolta and Nicolas Cage next week, which I am super excited to finally watch.
You know what? In that movie, that's the movie where they take his face off. They take it off.
I'm so excited. I've got lots of stuff to say about Nick Cage and how I've come to enjoy his movies over the years, but I will save that for the next episode.
I cannot wait.
So
I have not seen that movie in so long, and I think it deserves to be celebrated.
great.
Or to be taken down a peg. We'll see.
Well, we'll find out on the next episode of
DVD Clutter.
It's the last animated masterpiece to have Walt Disney's personal touch. The most outrageous classic of them all, Walt Disney's The Jungle Book.
Take me home, Daddy.